So welcome to How to Future-Proof Your Career in 2020 and Beyond webinar. So I see people telling me they're from Singapore, and I know we have audience from Thailand, Philippines, Indonesia as well. So You-Lin and I are both based in Singapore as well. So before we start, some housekeeping rules. So this session is being recorded and we'll send you all a replay later. So please make sure you remain muted and your camera is off throughout the entire session. So the spotlight will be on the speaker. And if you have any questions, please leave them on the chat box and I'll read it out for you during the Q&A. So hello, everybody. So for those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Sabrina. I'm the founder and CEO of Half the Sky, a career platform for diverse talent. So today we're very fortunate to have Eu-Lin to share with us her thought leadership. So a quick introduction. Eu-Lin is currently a partner, head of sustainability and climate services and PwC in Singapore. And also she's the head of PwC Academy Services as well. And she has close to 20 years of audit, governance, risk and controls experience, and also worked in Singapore and London. So Eu-Lin also wears several hats. She's a director and audit committee chairman on several boards as well. So welcome, Eu-Lin. We're very lucky to have you today.
Thanks for having me, Sabrina. Thank you. Okay, shall I just share my screen now?
Yes, so let me do the quick introduction first of the webinar today. So the COVID-19 pandemic has disrupted how we live, work, and play and impacted business across industries in ways that many had never imagined. As businesses and workers move from crisis management to long-term planning, there are many questions that people are seeking to be addressed. How will the pandemic impact my career long-term? What skills do I need to remain competitive in the job market? How will remote working affect my job? And how do I become digital savvy? So for the first 20 minutes, Eu-Lin will share with us some important findings from PwC's recent report on upskilling. And in the following 50 minutes, I'm going to dig deeper with Eu-Lin on how we can future-proof our career, followed by a Q&A session. So I'm going to give the floor to Eu-Lin and make her a host so she can share her slides.
Thanks, Sabrina.
Your host now, Eu-Lin.
Okay, got it. Okay, can everybody see my screen?
Maybe you can give us a thumbs up on the chat if you can see Eu-Lin's screen and hear her. Okay, perfect. Thank you, Carolyn.
Super. Well, firstly, thanks, Sabrina, for inviting me. It is, I think that today's discussion topic is quite a tall order, in terms of future-proofing, one's career. I think, one's career is always, it's never full, it's never always ups, right? It's always full of interesting curves, ups and downs as well. But maybe, at some stage during the conversation, I'll just share a bit more about my personal views and reflections or musings on this matter. But, I don't think I'll be able to answer all the questions perfectly, but I'll certainly try my best. Firstly, I would like to thank Sabrina for inviting me. I still remember the first time that Sabrina spoke to me about Half the Sky. That was probably a couple of years ago, and we were sitting in a restaurant, and she said that she expressed to me, her passion for empowering women in the workforce, and also spoke passionately about creating this platform that she wanted to build, and she did it. Fast forward to today, it is now a reality. So, thank you very much, Sabrina, for your courage and being relentless in doing this. It is not easy, and I really thank you for the impact that you're making for the women in the community. If I may also just express a little bit about my background. I'm a chartered accountant by training, and I always never really thought that I would be I guess an accountant. I was always more a creative person, but I was also quite good at math as well. lo and behold, I became an accountant, a chartered accountant, and also, progressed to, being an auditor in a Big Four firm. And I would say that the career has changed over the years, for focusing on financial services, and then, focusing on education now, help with the PwC's Academy, and also, now focusing on an important topic, which is climate and also sustainability, where I help my clients, with their ambitions in relation to that. I would say that it is not easy to actually pivot from time to time. But thank God, that all is going well. I'm able to use, my skill sets, to venture into adjacencies as well. And one of my passions is also outside of work, being able to just help out a little bit more, whether on, not-for-profit boards, or, also volunteering in the youth area and also in the elderly area as well. But today, I want to keep it rather, pithy, and I wanted to just go through a little bit in the next 20 minutes around context, what's happening in our world today. That Sabrina is right. There are a couple of thought leadership or research that PwC has done. One is called the Hopes and Fears Survey, and the other one is called the Talent Trends 2020. I also like to share a little bit more around the, those who are in Singapore, some of the national priorities and the avenues for support. And I will then go into a little bit more personal reflections about, when Sabrina gave me this challenging question about how do you safeguard jobs? How do you secure your career? And I said, wow, that's a really tough question. Let me go and mull about it. And, I will share some my own personal reflections and observations about that. Now, moving on. So the economy, changing consumer needs, and demographic change is really changing the complexion of jobs. So one big disruption is actually COVID, as what Sabrina has said. And COVID is now a healthcare issue that has now become an economic issue. And if it's not careful, it will become a social issue with potential erosion of jobs. So, this is not, it is a very, very serious matter. So I don't want to belittle the matter, but however, I think today's conversation is about taking practical steps to safeguard your career, even, post-COVID as well. On the impact of jobs, one of the key areas is really the fourth industrial revolution. So the fourth industrial revolution was actually coined by the World Economic Forum founder, which is Klaus Schwab. And how it's differentiated from the previous industrial revolutions is that, it has elements such as Internet of Things, cloud technology, and the ability to automate, complex tasks. However, I don't think, that, when you see all these sci-fi films, right, I don't think we're there yet. I think we're very far away from that. But it is indeed, a period of great technology advancement. So this is one of my most favorite graphs, this is called the AstroTalus graph. AstroTalus, as you know, and some of you might know, is Google X's CEO. And I really like this graph because it explains quite simply the tensions that we're going through. So over here, and if I just may show my pointer, okay, there you go. And you see, technology is never a linear curve. It's a bit like a hockey stick, right? It's because, technology always builds on the shoulders of previous technology, so it's exponential. However, for human adaptability, it is not so much an exponential graph. So if you see, a human adaptability is still rather flat. But what we have right here is that we are here right now, which is that, technology is, I suppose, past, human adaptability. So this difference here actually causes a lot of tension. Sometimes I also personally find that technology is going too fast for me. I used to think that I was quite a tech-savvy person, but there are so many things, new things that I've got to learn nowadays. And, there is an opportunity, though, for closing that gap. And what AstroTalus says is that you got to be able to learn faster. And so, the key element here is the ability to, include, learning in your day-to-day life. But I think, now with COVID, right, I think that has, many people have said that that has really accelerated technology, accelerated new ways of working as well. So this gap, right, as we go through, as we emerge through COVID, is probably going to be larger. So the element, right, of doing something rather than not doing anything or inaction is very important. So one of the key things I wanted to share with you was around upskilling and also reskilling. Now, the World Economic Forum also has a lot of thought leadership. If you go to their website, they've got a lot of interesting stuff. And one of the two things that they say is that, with this COVID crisis, there are two things that you can do. The key things would be to double down on upskilling and reskilling. And the other thing is to also identify what could be the jobs of tomorrow, what could be your job of tomorrow. And I'll share a little bit more around where you can find that kind of information. So one of the key things that I realized was that throughout all the literature that is being pushed out there in the public domain, there are a few areas which are actually quite consistent, which is that the skills of tomorrow require a couple of skill sets, right? I don't think it's right to say that those people who would survive the next time will only be people who are coders, and totally au fait with like tools such as Python. I think as we actually go through the next few years, there will be a very strong need for not only digital skills or the ability to use digital tools, but also the skill sets of creativity and also problem solving. And as I mentioned just now, one of the couple of things that the World Economic Forums has said is that during this time, we should double down on upskilling and also reskilling, and also identify the jobs of tomorrow. So now I'm just going to go into the hopes and fears survey that PwC has done. Now we interviewed probably about 2,000 plus people in Singapore about what they thought, about they feel about technology's impact on jobs. So there is generally a mix of optimism and uncertainty amongst the Singaporean population. Not surprisingly, 58% are worried about technology. And that it would make their role redundant, and 36% were worried that they wouldn't have the right skills. I worry about that, all the time, with regards to my teams and also with myself as well. And about 1 in 2 of the workers believe that automation will significantly change or make their job obsolete within the next 10 years, quite consistent with other literature out there as well. However, the news is not all bad. Almost the same number thought that, with the technology, they can do things better and there are better opportunities at work as well. And 85% felt as if the technology would change their work for the better. When in terms of whether or not, the population that we surveyed was ready to upskill, 81% of the respondents in Singapore, they said that they were already learning new skills, and I suspect that is because of the Skills Future movement, which is a very good initiative and agency set up by the Singapore government. But they also shared that even if they weren't already pursuing opportunities, 92% said that they would definitely want to take up the opportunity to better understand the use of technology if it were available to them. So there's a real eagerness to want to upskill. And 76% of the workers say that their employers are already giving them opportunity to improve their digital skills. However, only 31 indicated they are currently upskilling through their employers. Yeah. So, and if their jobs were at risk, 85% of the Singaporeans would definitely want to learn new skills in order to improve their employability and also safeguard their jobs. Now, compared to the rest of the world, Singaporeans have emerged to be most likely to learn new skills through their employer, right? Same with the Dutch. And, Singaporean workers were also the most likely to accept a lower position in another company or industry if they believed their job was at risk of automation. So they're quite practical about things. And about 2 in 5 are scared or nervous about the future's impact on technology on the job. So actually, generally, I think that Singaporeans are quite worried about technology vis-a-vis other countries. When it comes to learning new skills, Singaporean workers are behind growth countries such as India, China, but are still above in terms of the average worker globally. So it's good, but still can be improved. There's also another thought leadership that PwC came up with quite recently, which is the Talent Trends 2020. I mean, in relation to the hopes and fears survey, this was done just before COVID, and I can imagine that with COVID upon us at the moment, I think that these fears will probably be a little bit more accentuated. Yeah. Now, going into the next survey, which is the Talent Trends 2020 report, where we also interview about 1,000+ CEOs in relation to upskilling for their organizations. Now, if you see here, so when we ask these global CEOs, right, how much progress has your organization made in the following areas related to upskilling? Now, if I just focus on, just these few here, in terms of an organization defining skills needed to drive future growth, improving workers and leaders' knowledge of technology, establishing upskilling programs to develop a mix of soft, technical, and digital skills, and collaborating with academic and government institutions on skills of the future, you'll find that out of the 1,000+ CEOs that we interviewed, it is still pretty low. I would have expected that in relation to defining the skills needed to drive future growth, in terms of determining what, for example, an organization, a bank, for example, what are the future skills required, I would have thought that these kind of organizations which have already done a good analysis on what could be the future skills required, so as to be able to identify the gaps in terms of skills for their workforce, so that they can work and close the gap and work towards these new types of skill sets and also new redesigned jobs as well. So generally, it is still rather low. So this, I would say, is a worry from my perspective. And in another survey, 77% of, however, in another survey, 77% of the 22,000 people that we surveyed said that there is a demand, from the workforce, okay, to want to upskill themselves to be more employable. So you can see that there is this gap between, potentially what employers are doing and also what the employees would like to achieve in relation to their upskilling ambitions. Now, when we asked the question on the 1,000+ CEOs about how confident are you about your organization's prospects over the next 12 months, when we use the lens of upskilling, so you can see here that those organizations who replied that they're very advanced, right, in upskilling, they were much more confident, right, in relation to the revenue growth. So if you see here, it is a good 80% plus, right? They were confident. However, those who are just actually beginning, they were less confident about the having about the revenue growth prospects. So there seems to be a correlation between upskilling your organization or an individual upskilling and also being able to derive the kind of value through revenue. And when we ask the next question, how effective are your upskilling programs in achieving the following outcomes? And if we look at here, the ones with more advanced upskilling upskilling organizations, they will be able to achieve a lot more in relation to, firstly, a stronger corporate culture, workforce productivity, so the workers' productivity, like the previous slide, greater business growth, improved talent acquisition and retention, greater innovation and digital transformation, and of course, reduce the skills gaps and mismatches as well. So there are advantages of upskilling. As we looked at the previous slide, one was in relation to the nexus, okay, between upskilling and also revenue growth, right? And also, and as mentioned, however, there is this gap between how people's ambitions towards upskilling and what organizations are doing. And also, for those organizations who are already quite deep into upskilling, they noted that there are many advantages, including greater business growth, higher productivity for the individual, and reducing skills gaps and mismatches. Now, at the start of my conversation, I mentioned that actually what's really important is the ability to be able to identify, what are the skills of the future for your organization, and also then put in place, understand what's your baseline in terms of what the skills that the workforce has right now, and also just take steps, right, to close that skills gap. Now in Singapore, there have been quite a number of success cases, quite a few, from the financial services line. So, for example, some of the bank tellers now, may see less of a need for that role, but they're now resprayed, and their job is now redesigned to be, for example, agile executives, where they help with project management, or they are helping out with the customer service at the branches as well. So I would say that there is no shortcut. Each role has to be looked at, has to be understood, and the future jobs of an organization, the organization must have the responsibility to identify what are their future jobs, identify what are the skills gaps, and also what are how to close the skills gap. So this is PwC's approach, which is the skills expander solution, and this is really the 6 steps, to trying to identify what are the jobs of the future, trying to identify, as I mentioned, baselining what are the current competencies of the impacted employees, and then find what's the potential best job and training match, and then train the new competencies as well. So now I'll maybe just share with you a little bit more. And Sabrina mentioned that quite a number of the participants were wondering where to go to get help. I'm just quoting some examples. There are many areas that you are able to get help. I mean, firstly, I think it's your own organization. If you are part of an organization, is to try to understand from your boss, or from the HR or learning department, if you have one, is what are the plans for the organization in terms of the employees' upskilling journey. But outside of that, there are also other avenues that would be available for support. So one is a few Skills Future SG, and for those who are not familiar with Skills Future, there are 4 key thrusts. Is to help individuals to make informed choices about where to get education and training. You also have your Skills Future credit as well. And the other area is to also develop integrated high quality system of education and training, that responds to the needs of the population. So they work with training providers on this. And they promote employer recognition and career development based on skills and mastery. So one of the linked programs for this is really a cool program, which is the professional conversion program, which I will come on to a little bit later. And really to foster a culture that supports and celebrates lifelong learning. So, I feel as if lifelong learning is here to stay. It is a little bit like wearing a mask, right? During COVID, wearing a mask is like very similar to trying to, put on a pair of socks when you go out. So likewise, learning and development, or continuous learning is a little bit like the approach towards savings, right? Putting aside some money for savings. So lifelong learning, I think, is a very important feature. But I would like to talk a little bit more about practical help on where you can get the information. So if you look at the Skills Future website, and I've extracted this from there, they have what they call the Skills Future Skills Framework. And it is actually broken down, okay, by the different industries that they have also done in conjunction with the industry transformation maps. So if you can see here, you will probably, be able to find your skills framework in relation to the industry that you're in. So for example, I'm in accountancy, and I can look at this skills framework inside here. And the skills framework actually provides you with what are the skill sets that you need, right, to progress to, different roles, existing roles, and also, roles which are, going to be in demand in the future, in the near future. But I'll just take, one example. Maybe I'll take financial services as an example. So not to scare you, but the Skills Future Framework, right, is a very, very detailed exercise that they have done, as I understand, with the with the industry platforms. So in this case, for financial services, they have done it, with skills with the Institute of Banking and Finance. Now you can't see this. This is just a sliver, okay, of financial services. Then the sliver here is actually in relation to retail banking as well, and there are others as well, like corporate banking and so on. And under retail banking, maybe I just zoom inside. Okay, there are also other divisions under retail banking. So you've got sales, you've got products, you've got ops, you've got digital and data analytics, and you've got risk and compliance and legal as well. And within that, they show you the different. I'm sorry that this is quite blurry, but you can go onto the website, or you can ask me later. I can send it to you where this link is. You can see also the different job roles, as you can start from as a junior, say, compliance analyst, and how is it that you can actually progress through the ranks to maybe one day becoming the head of compliance. But that's more vertical, going upwards. But it also maps out, right, what are the lateral, job roles that you can do as well. So, you can be, yes, a compliance analyst, but you can go into ops later, and when you go into ops later under, risk and compliance, you can go into ops later under as well, the operations part of the bank as well, or the retail banking business unit. So it's really quite detailed, and it shows you the different lateral and also the upward pathways that one could take. But that's not the end. So if you go to the next slide, so under, say, risk management, governance, and regulatory compliance for, say, retail banking, just a sliver of financial services, they would then go into detail about the different roles under risk management, governance, and regulatory compliance. So for example, let's take ALM, asset and liability management. And under asset and liability management, they will then list down what are the so-called technical skills and competencies that are required, for an individual to progress within that skill set and within that role as well. And and if they wanted to actually get some training on this, they can go to the Institute of Banking and Finance, which is the trade association linked to financial services. So I would say that the Skills Future is really quite a detailed, can provide very detailed analysis on how to get to your ambitions, and what is the skills that is required to get to your ambition as well. So for certainly from an accountancy standpoint, when I look at it, and when I was a young associate at PwC versus what now the skills framework for an associate, right, under audit, I would say that the skill sets are so different. There's a lot more use of digital and data, so I think one thing to note is that I think the skills framework will also evolve. I understand that from time to time, this skills framework will be updated by Skills Future also, so you have to watch the space as well. So hence my previous comment about I think lifelong learning will be a little bit like having that habit of actually putting aside savings. Is just something that you will always do. Okay, then this is another cool, useful initiative, and it's something, this is called a professional conversion program, where if you wanted to actually pivot, and it's probably quite useful for mid-careers as well, wanted to pivot into another area, there's also help for that. There are 2 areas where you can place and train, and also attach and train. They're quite similar, but PwC, we have done the place and train program. I'll just zoom into that a little bit, where you hire a participating employee. You're hired by a participating employer. In this case, an example would be PwC, and before undergoing training to take on a new role. For me, I personally have hired a mid-career person, in their 40s, and during that period of time, we would then have training and on-the-job training, so that this individual can actually take on a completely or quite similar, but very different role as well, to what he or she was doing before. So if you click here, there'll be the different types of sectors, right? And also, so if you're in, say, built environment, you can see, what are the PCPs that are available and who is providing that as well. So you can see here, PCP, there's PCP for personal, there's a professional conversion programs for people who want to become management accountants, but have some basic understanding of accountancy or an adjacency skill set. And you can see here as well for PwC, we've got, our own program as well. And I think, there's a lot of good grants as well for the organization to actually embark on a PCP with the individual or individuals as well, so to make it more attractive. Okay. So I'm just perhaps going to now just talk a little bit more around my reflections. I know Sabrina, mentioned the title, which is around how do you, I guess, safeguard your jobs and your career. And I think that these are, I think it's quite difficult, and it takes a conscientious effort. But I just maybe like to just share with you some 6 quick reflections. So the first one is this, right, which is that to own it. I think sometimes I fall into the trap that my career, is actually people need to help me out, on my career, but actually the responsibility is really on the individual, yourself, to actually own it, right, and to actually stay relevant. So it's to really firstly ask yourself, where do you want to go, and how am I going to be? How can I get there? There are ingredients on how you can get there. So one of it is actually how do you upskill yourself? And I'm always on a continuing development journey. And at the same time, it's also helpful to have the counsel of others who are your formal and informal mentors as well. So that is something that I would say, that recognize that, and keep reminding yourself that you own your own career. And this is one of my favorite shows when I was growing up, which is Terminator. I really liked the dystopian story about this. And if you are reminded, right, Skynet from Terminator is a highly advanced computer system possessing artificial intelligence, and it became self-aware one day. And once it became this, highly intelligent AI became self-aware, it saw humanity as a threat and decided to wage war against the humans, hence, sending these Terminators. But, alas, this is something which is very far-fetched. I really don't think that, AI is going to be self-aware anytime that soon, at least not in our lifetimes, and we are still relevant. And the other encouraging thing that I've also noted is that actually throughout humanity, right, we've always been able to use tools, to our advantage. So it could be, the first industrial revolution, or the second and the third industrial, more recently the third industrial revolution, which is computerization. And I'm sure, people had a lot of fears, with regards to that, but we still used it as a tool, right? And we were still, able to use it to our advantage. And I'm quite sure, for the fourth industrial life, fourth IR, or even fifth IR, we will definitely still be relevant and we'll be able to use these tools to our own advantage. And I think the other bit was, recognizing that, technology can also be good. My reflection, I actually said that, my late grandmother, I bought her, she mentioned that her friends were actually having, smartphones. So I said, okay, I will get her a smartphone. And I realized, how that, created a change in terms of how she was socializing, and she was able to then, connect with all her friends. So I thought that, technology is really, has great advantage. And when I come back to, my own work as well, you can see that, technology is able to, and digital is able to help me to do work better, and able to, for me to actually present my work better to, my clients as well through visualization. And no doubt, it is actually a good lever for society as well, with regards to the elderly, being able to access content, or, for children or the youth, also being able to learn online as well. And as you know, education is also, a lever for actually closing inequality gaps too. And the next one reflection I like to say is that don't waste a crisis or a downfall. And, so even if COVID or other situations would have caused you some setbacks, I think that you should not waste the crisis. I know it's easier said than done, but, from my own observations, I used to have a friend who was out of a job for about 1.5 years, but he was relentless. He would attend every seminar, that he could go to or he was invited to. He would make sure that he kept up to date with people, he networked, and he really just turned up, right? He didn't say that, oh, I'm out of a job, no, I'm just going to stay at home. But he just turned up. And now he is the CEO of a very prominent tech company. So I think that from, my learnings of people like them, I think don't waste a crisis or downfall, just turn up. The next one is in relation to imposter syndrome. I think beware, my own reflections are that in order for you to continue to thrive in your career, beware of the imposter syndrome. I think that's something which is quite more relevant for women. Sometimes, especially for women who are high achievers, who have set high standards for themselves, they always say that I'm not good enough. What am I doing? I'm a fraud. And I always say that, we know less than others, but actually, we know just as much as others as well, or maybe sometimes even more. And, some of the quite frightening facts that I've just learned was that 28% of women, have stopped actually speaking up at meetings. So 30% of women have stopped speaking at meetings because they feel like they have imposter syndrome. And another number is 75% of professionals regularly procrastinate as a direct result of imposter syndrome. So I think that's something that we have to just keep a check on for ourselves, if applicable, and also cheer each other on as well. If you do see that, cheer each other on. And lastly, I think what I say, one step back, 2 steps forward. In my own reflections, I think that, in terms of a career, sometimes, you have to take a step back or take a step sideways in order to be able to take 2 steps forward. I've seen countless times where, people that I look up to have taken a job switch. They've taken 1 step back in terms of maybe their rank, but they have, advanced and they have flourished so much, over time. They would not have gotten there if they hadn't taken that step out or they've taken a step backwards. So these are some of my own personal reflections on, how, we can continue to thrive in our career even long before after COVID. So that's all I have for now. I'm sorry, Sabrina. I think I might have overshot. Yeah.
It's okay. Don't worry. So
Yeah.
I'm going to reclaim host, and I'm going to share with you all a screen as well. Bear with us. Alrighty. You guys can see my screen okay?
Yeah.
Awesome, thank you. And thank you, Grace, for the comment as well. So Grace just said great reflection, and thank you, Eu-Lin, for sharing. So yes, so thank you so much, Eu-Lin, for all the sharing. You have just painted a clear picture of the current talent market and what skills potentially we should all have to stay relevant for the future work. So I have a lot of questions popping up in my head during your presentation. So let's dig a bit deeper in the next 50 minutes. So I'm going to, yes. So the pandemic has transformed the business landscape where we're now all working from home, virtual meeting and social distancing. So Eu-Lin, what should we all do now to stay employed?
I think that to stay employed, I think that actually sometimes the economy may not be so buoyant at this point in time, right? You'll find that sometimes also in certain job roles, your tasks could also be less, right? So I would say that, again, going back to that reflection, don't waste a crisis, don't waste a downtime. I would say that, you go out there and see think about where do you want to go, and the skill sets that, you need to get there, right? So don't think about it short term, think about it long term. I would also want to just share that, at the end of the day also, it is also okay to invest a little bit more, right? So I guess the harsh reality is that at the end of the day, a certificate does matter, right? Credentials do matter. It is a currency when you are out there in the market, and it's a very competitive market. So, look to good programs, deep programs that are the best is to be able to give you that, the skill sets to apply or the knowledge to apply. At the same time, also gives you that currency as well. Yeah.
Thank you, Eu-Lin. And what impact will the pandemic have on shaping the future of work?
Well, the future of work is already here, right? So with the pandemic, it just accelerated everything. I'm now very comfortably working from home. I think the future of work is upon us, right? And it will continue to change. What I do think, though, is that there may be a shift, right, towards perhaps more gig workers, okay, the gig society. I think that is good, right? There's a lot of benefits to gig society, such as flexibility in terms of time. But I think what the pandemic has shown is that the gig workers can be quite exposed, right? So I think that's something that should be looked at in a little bit more details in terms of safeguarding, the incomes of gig workers should another situation like that occur. So some nice reflections for that. But the gig economy is actually pretty good as well because, you can, I suppose, with technology, not only for certain types of roles, not only serve the local market, but also the overseas market as well.
And Eu-Lin, do you think the gig economy is actually an advantage for women or disadvantage?
Oh, I mean, I think that you're asking a rhetorical question. Of course it's an advantage.
So that's good to hear.
Yeah. I mean, assuming that, again, I said there are some shortcomings of the gig economy, right? You don't have the same type of benefits as you would have, if you were in, permanent employment. But I think these areas are already being looked at.
Thank you. And Eu-Lin, what forces apart from the pandemic are reshaping the future of work? I know you mentioned it a little bit during your presentation, but maybe you can share with us several other bullet points, like a summary.
I think that other parts of forces, I guess is really technology, right? Yeah. So with technology, I think you can work, anywhere right now. So one of the key things, is really um, technology will be able to actually allow you to work in very differently, right? The other bit also, I think, right, is also demographics. I read somewhere that in the future, I think the number of people retiring in Singapore, would be probably twice as much as the workforce coming in. I think that's an issue. So the working population will therefore be a little bit more condensed, or be less. So what does this mean in terms of allowing people to work beyond their so-called retirement age, right? Does this mean that we have to, sort of like from time to time, relook at that as well? So you would find that the future of work could maybe be working from several places, working on the same project, but working from several places, and working in really more intergenerational teams as well, right? So how is it that how can you work better in intergenerational teams, right? So there probably needs to be some culture building around that as well. Although I think so far I haven't seen any difficulties in that.
Thank you. And many workers have been informed that the change in work will be coming due to digitalization, AI, robotics, but many have failed to take action. Could you share with us why now is a critical moment to relearn, retrain, reskill?
Okay, so I think it's very simple. Is jobs, right? It's jobs and your livelihoods as well. Okay, so I think you also have to look at ebbs and flows. Where is it is an ebb industry? Where is a flow industry? So if you look at the World Economic Forum and other literature as well, which is out there, you will be able to find different job roles of the future, right? And they will also be quite candid to also tell you what are the job roles which maybe are not so relevant for the future. Okay, so and this can come, and it's quite complex. Some job roles will change sooner than others. Some take a little bit longer, right? But the important thing that it will change. A case in point are accountants. Okay, so accountants like me, how is it that I can create more value add? The usual Excel spreadsheet is not going to cut it anymore. How is it that I can create more value add to my clients through other ways, through leveraging digital, through leveraging visualization technology? At the same time, also do a better job. So I would say that there are lots of ebbs and flows in terms of industries, in terms of new jobs, and also there are also you must pay attention to also national priorities as well. So if you look, everybody I think is aware that Singapore is a smart nation, wants to be a smart nation. So that means it's a strong focus on technology. So that would be what we consider as a flow area, because then a lot of resources will be put into that, a lot of focus will be put into that in order to allow people to, or for Singaporeans and the business community to flourish in the area. So I think take note of ebbs and flows, and if you're in the flow area, I think you can't go very wrong.
That's a really good point. So Eu-Lin, would you say the drive and determination to retrain, relearn, reskill is actually a survival skill?
I think it is, but I do not have any. I'm very confident that people will be able to. I mean, as I mentioned earlier on, we have been able to survive the first, second, third, industrial revolution. What makes you think you can't survive the fourth industrial revolution? Right? More jobs have been created, but I think that it is quite a serious thing also to go through an economy which is not doing so well. We should definitely help each other to remain relevant, because once we remain relevant, you're useful. You are able to also create value, right? We always have to tie it back to the value that you're creating.
Absolutely. How are we going to add value to the organization? Thank you, Eu-Lin. And as digitalization increases across the economy, what skills will be essential to remain competitive in the job market of the future?
I mean, if you look at all the literature out there, there's lots of skills, right? It's quite frightening. So, sometimes I wanted to show the World Economic Forum Jobs of the Future slides, but it was just it was quite detailed. So I left that out. But if you were to, I guess, look at, let's take a step back. As I mentioned in the slides just now, there are a few components, that will put you in good stead. I believe would be that you need to be, firstly, of course, have a good handle on digital. Not asking an individual to, become a Python master overnight. But it's actually quite good to have a clear understanding of how you can actually use digital, to enhance your service or product and your value. If you don't know, work with people who do know, right? And the next area, as I mentioned, is creativity and also, innovation as well, problem solving, right? And I think what this pandemic has actually shown is that we are able to then now, right, look at who are the problem solvers and who are not problem solvers. I think that is, what people would like to, these are the type of people want to work alongside, right, to learn from as well, is problem solvers. And you can see from the pandemic that there's so much innovation and creativity that has come out of it, right? And so again, you asked me, what are the critical skill sets? I would say that, have a nice handle on digital, even if you don't work with people who do. Creativity, problem-solving skills. Because I think that you will, from time to time, have these kind of situations, such as a pandemic. It may not come in the form of a pandemic, but maybe something else. And as companies, as well, individuals start to go beyond Singapore and, for lack of a better word, internationalize, you would find that you'll be faced with some more hard knocks, right? So I think those skills would be very good. At the same time, spiritually, I think you need to be very resilient as well.
Absolutely. And I think we're all very resilient. We're all very adaptable as a human being. And Eu-Lin, I want to extend a little bit, because recently I also saw a report from LinkedIn. They're talking about the skill sets in demand in 2020. So for the technical skills, I remember they have 10. So I'll share as many as I can. So number one is blockchain. And then there will be data analytics, AI. There are a few more as well. Video editing is the last one. So please check out the report so you can see, 10 skills that will be in demand in 2020 and beyond. So, Eu-Lin, what does the future workforce look like? I think you mentioned it a little bit just now.
Yeah, as I mentioned, the future workforce, I believe is creative, problem solving, digitally enabled, digitally skilled, and is inclusive as well. Okay, so the young, the mid, the not so young, and also the old can really work together. Right? Yeah. work together and flourish as well.
Inclusive as in the companies start realizing building a workforce that represent the community that they're serving. So of course, including a very diverse background.
Yeah, diverse, including age as well, and a workforce who is able to work anywhere, anytime, and serve local and also global as well.
Very good. So last questions before we move to Q&A. Eu-Lin, what are your thoughts on shaping your own career and skills destiny?
My own?
Yes.
Okay. I think, for me, every maybe 5 to 10 years, I would say that I want to do something courageous and brave. Okay. So one of the few things I always think about is how do I actually, upskill myself and be better. But I do need to kind of have a sense about, it's not without careful studying and also consultation. So, I usually, look at what are the trends, as I mentioned, ebbs and flows, what are the flow areas. So with that, I would say, okay, this is a flow area. I think, that sustainability and climate change is a flow area. It is something that requires, problem solving and complex thinking as well. So that's something that I'm looking to as well in terms of how am I going to upskill even more, in relation to the climate and, sustainability area, so that I can better serve, my clients and also the community.
Very good. So we don't have too much time left, probably about 5 minutes. So we're going to quickly go through all the Q&As being sent from the audience. So question number one is from Joveline. So will the current oversupply of workers heavily impact incomes of those who started a new job this year?
Okay, so I think the struggle is real. Okay, so the government has actually given out quite a generous support in terms of the job support scheme, right? But I think we are all firefighting. What I do think is that I think the right approach is a shared burden approach, in my opinion. Okay, which is that in order to keep jobs, employment, and and also impact keep livelihoods, I think everybody should take a shared burden approach. So throughout the organization, maybe everyone should say, okay, I'll take a little bit back. I'll cut back a little bit, right? So that everybody is win-win for everybody. Yeah. So that's what I think should be the approach. Not okay, you cut your salary, I might maintain.
No.
I think that's we should do a shared burden approach. Yeah.
And Amanda is asking you, I was a technical writer. What skills do I need to remain competitive in the job market as an aspiring re-entrant?
I think, was this Amanda?
Yes, Amanda.
Yeah, I think Amanda, this bit here, there is quite a fair bit of information out there in relation to how you can become competitive. The Skills Future website, I think, has a lot of information around what are the areas, where's the roles that you can go towards or laterally also, and also what are the skill sets that you require, and also where you can get the training from. There are also quite a number of platforms in order for you to reach out to, such as E2I as well, and other agencies who can help you to, I guess, give you advice as well on how you became competitive, and also even how to get your next gig as well, a job. Yeah.
Thank you. And this question is from Elsa. What is the career progression for a legal secretary?
Okay, sorry, I also wanted to just go back into Amanda's question. Forgot to say that I think even if it is maybe people might not have a permanent job, in the horizon, but it's also still okay to do part-time. I know easier said than done, and also it is less how to say, you feel that might be less of a safety net, either being a gig worker, or working part-time, or having a traineeship program even. But I think it's okay. This adds to your CV, so think long term about that as well. Yeah, sorry I interrupted.
No, it's okay. Thank you, Eu-Lin. So yes, so what is the career progression for a legal secretary?
Okay, so I think for the legal secretary, again, I think there are many things that a legal secretary can do. A legal secretary presumably has a great eye for detail, right? And with that, there are many jobs adjacencies that you can explore as well. There's no reason why you should, with some certificates and some upskilling, and some learning, you can, even go into accountancy if that's something that you like. But going into operations would be also good. Even becoming a lawyer eventually, I think, is also fine. I still remember, that one of the secretaries in the in one of the in one of the accounting firms, for one of the partners, she was a secretary, but she eventually became a chartered accountant and also set up her own accounting firm. 5 to 10 years later, I thought that was wonderful. So sky's the limit, and you own half the sky as well. So yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, but practically, I think you should just, again, go back. There's lots of information in the Skills Future website. Please go back, do research that. And I remember, under the financial services part, there is, although that's not exactly, law firm secretary, but there's a pathways for something similar as well. Yeah.
Thank you, Eu-Lin. And this question is from Farida. So I was retrenched due to COVID, feeling anxious and frustrated. What would be your advice?
Yeah, well, I'm very sorry that this has happened. It is very unfortunate, and I want to recognize that it is not easy. I also have a number of my friends who have gone through a similar situation, and it impacts the family. It impacts the well-being of an individual. But I would like to say that I believe it's not you, right? So don't take it personally. It's the environment that we are in, but I think that my advice would be, as I was sharing with you, that observation that I had from my friend who was out of a job for a year and a bit. He never gave up. He just turned up. Just turn up. And I know for women it's so difficult. We, because of imposter syndrome, sometimes we think, I'm just not good enough. I'm not going to turn up. I'm not turning up. That person's going to be there. No, my ex-colleague's going to be there. I don't want to turn up. But actually, I realized that nothing bad really happens if you turn up. Right? Most of the time, it's a plus. So maybe sometimes it might be awkward, but I think like my friend, he just turned up. Right? He continued to stay engaged with current affairs. He continued to, keep up with people, to network, and the outcome was great. So I think don't give up.
That's a very good advice. And since we're talking about retrenchment, I want to share a bit of my own experience as well, which I openly share in public as well. So the last global financial crisis, which is 12 years ago, I was being retrenched 3 times in 1 year. So I felt exactly the same as everyone is feeling right now, who just being retrenched. But now I look back, those experiences actually build my resilience. And this year this is a very unprecedented time. And I feel that the experience that I had 12 years ago actually built me up to be resilient right now.
Yeah, I can vouch for her. She's a very resilient person.
Thank you. So Agnes is asking, as a mid-career job seeker with no consulting industry experience, how can I signal on the job application my interest to pivot into the consulting industry?
how can I signal on the job application my interest to? Okay, so I mentioned about the example on the professional conversion program, right? I think you don't need to indicate on your job application. You just go and I guess either talk to the organization, that actually you can, but you can talk to the organization that you're applying to, that look, I've got no experience, but this is how I'm going to get there, right? So the professional conversion program is actually, pretty good. They would, the employer would be able to get, a defrayment in terms of the salary cost for the person who is seeking for that sort of like pivoting, so it's actually quite well supported. So that's something that I think, firstly, I think you should identify what are the skill sets that you can bring to the table as well, fundamental skill sets. So if you are somebody who is a problem solver, who is creative, right, I think, you'll be snapped up in no time, right, and you'll be able to demonstrate that. Now, maybe you might not have the domain knowledge, but if you can relay to your potential employer that yes, there is an investment that I'm making, is an investment that you are making, and there is also an investment that the government is making in this, and I think together we can have a deal, right? So maybe that's one way of positioning it. Again, shared burden basis or shared investment. Everybody puts in something.
Absolutely. And there are two questions from Pathma. So number one is, what are the best tips to stay relevant in the current job market? And what's the best way to get a recruiter's attention?
Yeah, I mean, the best tips to stay relevant in a job market, as I mentioned, is again, that was my mentee is very cute, right? He is coming out from school, right? And then he told me that oh, I just signed up for this course to do business valuation. He's arts. I think he's an art student, so maybe he hasn't done too much finance kind of modules, right? So he said that okay, it's going to be quite a challenging time for new graduates. But I want to get a job, and I want to make sure that I, put myself in the best position. So he said that, he got signed up for a Coursera, with a very nice university, I think it was MIT or something, right? He's going through this business valuations course with MIT. And he also managed to get some, funding for it as well. So he doesn't have to pay too much. So I think my story is that to stay relevant in the job market, I think we heard about upskilling, right? So I think upskilling is very important, and also to show the desire to actually learn, right? I think will put you in a very good stead. As I mentioned, also upskilling must be seen as as regular, as as integral as part of your life, like just putting aside money for savings, right, for investments. Yeah. Oh, what's the best way to get a recruiter's attention? Actually, I don't really know, because I've been in the firm for about 18 years. This is my first and only job. So actually, when you find out, you let me know also.
So maybe I can answer these questions, because
but I think the best way to get recruiters' attention, from what I had observed, right, is try to document down your achievements. And I think some people are very good at documenting down their achievements on LinkedIn, right? LinkedIn is a great tool, right? And I think one way is to just make sure that you document down your achievements in a comprehensive way. Yeah. And again, try not to have imposter syndrome.
So stay active on the LinkedIn community, and update your own LinkedIn profile as well.
Yeah, I think many of my contacts have actually got jobs through LinkedIn, so it's a pretty good platform, I would say.
Yes.
So updating your key points via LinkedIn would be, I think, advantageous.
Absolutely. So last questions of the day. This is from Sonali. I'm in between jobs. What are your advice to stay relevant and visible with our clients and peers?
Yeah, I think that depends on how long you are in between. Yeah. Okay. So I would say if you are just in between jobs, like a month or something, you probably not be too find too much difficulty in terms of staying in the market, right? But I would say if you're in between jobs for a longer period, I think it's a little bit more challenging because your peers are probably working during the day, right? And your clients are also working during the day, right? So, but I think if you can write down on a piece of paper, just a practical way, who is it that you want to keep in contact with, right? Just write down on a piece of paper, or in this case, maybe on your computer. Who is it that you want to keep in contact with, and just set up regular timing to reach out to them, one-on-one, or with people as well. I think sometimes people, and myself as well, I have I don't write things down, so I always forget. But so I think it's important to write down the people that are important to you, who you want to continue to engage, and set a timing for that to reach out to them. And again, try not to have imposter syndrome too.
So that's it for today. So thank you everyone so much for joining us today. And we have a lot of resources to share with you on our platform. So make sure you sign up on halftheskyAsia.com. It's completely free. You'll also receive exclusive event invites like this one, job alerts, thought leadership content, and resources. Again, it's completely free. We also have several more webinars coming up in July. We're going to have an ex-CFO at Commonwealth Bank to teach us financial wellness and empowerment. And we also have a senior executive from financial services industry turned executive coach to share with us tips on how we can raise our profile at work. So make sure to check them out on our event page, and we'll also send the details out in our newsletter. So thank you so much, Eu-Lin, for your time today.
You're welcome. No, thank you so much for the invitation, and to everyone, thank you so much for your time.
Yes. So stay safe, everybody, and take care.